What's up, Warrior Nation? Welcome back to the Warrior Rewind, where we take time to visit with members of the Valley Christian athletics community, past and present. Once a Warrior, always a Warrior. This is your host, Rob Fair, VC Class of 2009, Assistant Athletic Director, and Warrior football and lacrosse coach. It's been a couple weeks since we recorded today's episode, but with some technical difficulties behind me, I'm happy to finally get it out. You can find the Warrior Rewind just about anywhere podcasts live, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Now let's get to work. When you think of who might be perhaps the most impactful Valley Christian Warrior of all time, today's guest certainly has to be listed towards the top. Coach John Diatte graduated from Valley Christian High School in 1984. He was a four-year letterman on the varsity baseball team and was also a starter on the football team during the first 3 years of the program's existence. After he graduated, Coach Diatte's first coaching gig was actually as an assistant football coach for the Warriors, including stints as the JV head coach and as a varsity assistant. Eventually, Coach Diatte would have the opportunity to take over the Valley Christian baseball program in 1990. In total, he inherited only 10 jerseys and 5 pairs of baseball pants that first year, a far cry from the locker full of uniforms that today's players have become accustomed to. Over the next 30 years, Coach Diatte would transform the program into what is today recognized as a national powerhouse. During his tenure, the Warriors have won 15 league championships across 5 different conferences, including 5 championships in the most competitive West Catholic Athletic League. His baseball teams have raised Central Coast Section championship trophies on 9 different occasions, including the most recent CCS Open Division three-peat in 2017, 18, and 19. Several successful baseball players have played under Coach Diatte's guidance, including former big leaguer Mike Rouse, current minor league baseball players Bryson Brigman and Kyle Marincons, and 2 high school draftees in Sean Dunston Jr. and Cam Stewart, just to name a few. In total, Coach Diatte has developed 4 WCAL Players of the Year, 3 CCS Players of the Year, and 6 All-Americans. Coach Diatte himself has received Coach of the Year honors on numerous occasions by organizations like Cal High Sports, the CCS, and the American Baseball Coaches Association. The Warriors baseball program has received national recognition several times under Coach Diatte's leadership, perhaps most notably in 2018, when Valley Christian was listed by Max Preps as the #1 team in the United States. Coach Diatte, thank you for being on the Warrior Rewind.
Rob, thanks for having me. I appreciate you taking the time to talk a little bit, and love to get back to Warrior Nation.
For sure. We have to start with the obligatory COVID-19 discussion, how the coronavirus has affected, sports across the nation, but in particular, how it's affected your baseball program this year. What's it been like not having a season?
The most important thing that I think we've all lost is the interpersonal relationships, the time that we get to spend face-to-face with individuals, not just our athletes, not just as coaches, just as people in general. And I think that this has been a big thing that has been on my mind, something that's worried me, and how we'll actually come out of this when we start to transition out of it, what that transition will look like just for the interpersonal relationships, people being around people. I think that's where we're most deprived. But it's been a challenge, to teach the life lessons that I think are most important, during this time, not being on the field. It's kind of cohesive when we are on the field. Things happen, you see them as they happen, and you remember the life lessons that you taught maybe 5 years before or the year before, and not having that structure in place, that's been a difficulty. It's really challenged me to really think about what's important, and then finding new and opportunistic ways of teaching those life lessons, even though we're not on the field.
What are some of the ways that you stay connected with your players, even though you can't be on the field with them?
Obviously, everybody's using Zoom now, or some type of platform like Zoom to communicate and to have meetings. What I've done is I started out by just having a team meeting, and I thought that wasn't enough. It only took me about a week to figure out that large group of guys, 60 to 70 guys, wasn't the way to have a meeting. And I started breaking the groups up into, class formations where I had 10 guys, 10 to 15 guys, where I could see them on my screen. I could see everybody who was participating in the meeting on my screen. I got some type of FaceTime with them, and that was our first step, having those small group meetings. And then we brought in ex players who would come in and talk to us, share their experiences as a Warrior with the guys, and we would do that at the end of each week, and we will continue to do it. This week will be our last one. We'll have Mike Rouse and Sean Dunston Jr. on to share with the guys. But I've also continued and broadened some of the other platforms that I was already using: Twitter, text messages, sharing emails, information through email, writing devotions. My devotions, and on game days, what I would do is write something inspirational, maybe 2 or 3 sentences, and that's kind of broadened out now because I have time, and I'm hoping that they're taking the time, because they're not in school and not really in a game day, to actually read the devotions. I've used a lot of that platform to teach the life lessons.
You briefly mentioned, having new opportunities to connect with old players and even have them connect with the team. You talk about having time and even being forced to expand your repertoire as a coach. What other kind of silver linings have you found during this COVID-19 process?
I would just say that would probably be the main one. Finding other opportunities and other platforms in order to communicate with athletes while trying to still teach the same lessons. That to me has been probably the most beneficial, or the most growth that I've had as a coach during this time. So that would be one silver lining. I think the other one would just be that we get firsthand experience at losing something we really love. And this is something that I saw in every one of my players. That last Thursday when we left campus, that the looks on their faces, that the thought that we weren't going to ever come back, that we were going to lose an entire season, and then watching them through these last few months grow and stretch themselves and really start to understand and feel, hey, this is something I really think is important. This is something I love, and it's not a part of my life right now. The benefit of having them, understand that feeling of loss, and really start to really appreciate the time that we do get to do the things that we love.
So true. You've been a Warrior for a really long time. Graduated in 1984 and on campus now today in your current role. What are, if you could describe for me, the biggest differences between Valley Christian in 1984 and today? And as a side note to that question, in particular, being the football coach that I am, what was it like playing on those first ever football teams compared to what the program is today?
Well, I'll answer the first part and try to do it in a humorous way. My biggest worry on campus as a student was whether or not I was going to get popped for dress code. We all were trying to stretch the limits. In those days, all the girls were wearing dresses. The guys we had to wear slacks and a button-down shirt, and we had to make sure that we had socks and a belt on. And of course, we were always stretching the limits in those days. I remember getting in trouble because I didn't wear socks on a particular day. And in those days, everybody wanted to wear the Docksiders, with bare feet, and so I'd get in trouble for not having my socks on or something like that. Of course, there's been a lot of changes too. That our entire campus, 420 students at my graduating year, is now just one class at Valley Christian. So we've obviously grown in our student size in that way. As far as the football team goes, I have amazing memories of being a part of those football teams and that football program. We were obviously not playing at the level that we are today. We had to go outside of our section in order to find teams that would play us or that we would match up with, because our school was so small. I think our first year we were still only about 300, maybe 250 students. So, we grew a little bit being on the campus we were there. But at the time, there were no schools in the Central Coast section that were that small that were playing football. So we had to go outside, and now we have, at the time was Morello Prep, which was in Santa Cruz. So I guess they were somewhat in the section, and Menlo, who is still in the section and has grown. But the other schools were all North Coast section schools. Our our playoffs were based in the North Coast section. So we were definitely in a small school situation. Our first game was against Modesto Christian, and then our second game, which was the first game we ever won in Valley Christian history, was against Foothill Christian, which I don't even know exists anymore. I know it was in like the Folsom, Rockland area. That, to the best of my memory, I don't know if they're still around.
Yeah, it definitely is a big difference between what the program looks like today. Coach, can you talk a little bit about your earliest days as Valley Christian's head baseball coach?
Well, as you stated before, I took this over. It was all gung-ho. I thought I was going to be a football coach. That's where my mind was at. That's what I wanted to do. I was hanging out with football coaches at San Jose State, and this is what I was going to do. My memories and my participation in football at Valley Christian really wanted me to be the head football coach there someday. And that was kind of where my thoughts were, and the direction where I thought I was going. So to inherit the baseball program, I inherited a few things that weren't all together on the positive side. We had 10 jerseys and 5 pairs of pants, or maybe it was 5 jerseys and 10 pairs of pants. But I remember we didn't have a whole lot of uniforms. My baseball budget wasn't that great. Our baseball budget altogether wasn't that great. I ended up having to raise money for new uniforms and equipment. There wasn't a whole lot there. I also inherited my younger brother, who played for me for 2 years, who happened to be the best player on our team and was a 1991 graduate of the school. Brian was a great player, but that posed some challenges coaching, Brian and his friends, and being so close in age. That was something that was a challenge for me every day. There's lots of stories that they challenged me. They challenged me on every level. Obviously, I learned how to change sprinklers. I learned how to mow lawns. I learned how to run sprinkler systems. I learned how to raise money. Raising money was a big deal to us at the time. We had to, in order to have the things that we have now, that money wasn't just going to be at the school. We had to go outside of the school resources in order to raise money. I had great people involved in our program that were actually outside of the program, willing to support us. Those things all made a big difference in those first few years. The goal was always to be, the best that we could be, to play at the highest level. And at the time, I really didn't know what that meant. Somebody asked me if I was going to use this as a stepping stone. And in my naive coaching thought process, I said to them, no, this is not going to be a stepping stone. I want this program to be the program that everybody else wants to be like. And, I was too stupid to know that I was saying something, extremely, it's extremely stupid, I guess is the best way to say it. But you look forward 30 years and God's provided. He's provided great mentors. He's provided great players. He's provided great facilities. And the program really has become something special to be a part of.
No doubt. What are some of the biggest differences between coaching baseball and coaching football, or what are the biggest similarities?
I don't think there's any differences. For me, I've always wanted to be a coach, and it goes back to when I was 8 years old. The kids on the block, you always played flag football or two-hand touch in the streets, and everybody would name the guy that they wanted to be. And I don't know how I did this, but I always wanted to be John Madden. But John Madden got to play in the games, right? I don't know how that actually happened, but I was definitely playing as part of the two-hand touch game in the front yard. But I always wanted to be, a coach. It's always been there. It's always been a part of me. And my goal is always to bring as much energy and excitement to practice every day. And whether that was as a football coach or as a baseball coach, I wanted to bring that intensity to practice. I wanted to practice. I've always thought to myself, this is my time. You know, the games are for the kids, but the practice time is really my time. And the ability to bring energy, intensity, and excitement to every moment of that practice has really been something I've kind of, always thought about and done within the framework of our practices. I've always thought that, coaching is my ministry. It's my passion. It's my hobby and my job. I have to be good at what I do. And so whether it's football or baseball or basketball, although that would probably, who knows what that would look like. But baseball just kind of fit me. It was the perfect fit. As much as I wanted to be a football coach, when God gave me this opportunity, when it was given to me, it automatically fit. At the pace of the game, the ability to play faster than the pace of the game, the way I saw it and the creativity that I was able to bring to baseball. I don't know that I would have, I could tell you the truth. I wouldn't have had that same creativity in football. I don't think that it just happened for me that I could see the way that the game went together, and I would be able to think outside of the box in order to make it better for the kids and our program.
Very, very powerful, Coach. That's super cool to hear all that. I mentioned in the intro, we discussed a little bit about the fact that your experience at Valley Christian is far-ranging and that you're certainly one of the most impactful Warriors of all time. So what does being a Warrior mean to you?
Well, I can't really think back to a time. I guess I do remember a time when I wasn't a Warrior, but this goes all the way back to junior high for me. When I left the public school system and started going to Valley Christian as a junior higher, it's just part of who I am now. I don't know that there's a separation there anymore. It's just I get up in the morning, and like I said, this is my passion. This is my ministry. It's my hobby. It's my job. Being a Warrior engulfs all those things for me. And I don't know that I've thought to myself what it would be like to be someplace else. And there really isn't any thoughts outside of being a Warrior. It's fit for me. It's a great institution and people to work for. I love my bosses. They give me opportunities. They've given me opportunities to grow and be myself and to grow a program and put my own personality and spin on that program. So, being a Warrior, again, I don't know if I'm answering the question completely, but it's just a part of who I am. It's what I've always wanted to be. And like I said earlier, I thought it was going to be as the Warrior football coach. It just happens to be that God had a different direction. He took me in a different direction, and I'm happy as can be to be the head baseball coach and be to be able to lead young Warriors in any way I can.
For sure. Once a Warrior, always a Warrior, no doubt. Valley Christian's motto is that we're always on a quest for excellence. So to be listed as the #1 team in the nation by Max Preps, in essence, winning a national championship, right, seems to be about as excellent as it gets. So how is it, Coach, that you define the word excellence?
That's this is going to be I hope I don't get too wordy on this. This is a longer thought process for me. I've tried to study as many coaches as I possibly could in my lifetime. I think I'm more of a fan of coaches than I am actually the game itself. Vince Lombardi said the pursuit of perfection is what we're actually after. The direct quote is, perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we might catch excellence. Lou Holtz kind of uses 3 different phrases: do right, do everything to the best of your ability, and show people you care. I'd like to think that excellence lies somewhere in all of that for me. The ability to be the very best at my job every day really pushes me, and I'm working towards perfection. I want to be a perfect coach. Now, again, knowing just like being a perfect Christian, that's never going to happen. But if we chase that, as Vince Lombardi said, if we're chasing that, maybe we grab excellence along the way. So excellence to me is just the ability to maximize my God-given talents, gifts, and abilities every day. And I want this to happen every day and with the individuals that I come in contact with. I think that the ability to show people that you love them is something that I've kind of, it's grown more and more as I've gotten older. Of course, I think I become more sensitive and in tune to that, much more emotional for sure when our athletes are graduating, when I see them come in and watch them grow. But I think, the pursuit of excellence has to have as part of that a component of loving the people who are around you and really making sure that they know that you care about the person that they are. I also think, though, that the most important thing that we do is develop teams. And although the individual is extremely important, the team aspect of what we do as coaches, it has to supersede that. It has to be the bigger goal. And for me, just developing teams who are all pursuing, those individuals individually pursuing perfection to try to catch excellence as a group of individuals and then coming together as a team is what we're really about as coaches. So for me, that's how I spend most of my time, is pushing our athletes towards team. And I don't want to say brainwashing them, but in some ways that's the only thing I'll talk about. I let them know how much I care and love them, but the team aspect is what I really talk about when I'm up in front of them and really pushing us in a direction, is to make sure that we understand that the team comes first.
For sure. Well, whatever the formula may be, we know that it's been successful, and that that pursuit of perfection eventually has landed Valley Christian in some of the nation's elite baseball programs. So you're definitely doing it, no doubt. Coach, what compliment stands out as the best that you've ever received?
I would say being called coach. I think that I'm not going to get emotional here, but try not to anyways. But I've always looked at that as, that's my degree. It's like having doctor in front of your name. And I know a lot of people look at it differently, and they'll tweak it and not want to be called coach. But for me, being called coach has been the greatest compliment, that anybody could give me. The players, and now as I've gotten older, 30 years into it, it's even the younger coaches, and they won't call me by my first name. It's just coach. And I think that's for me, it's just a huge badge of honor. The fact that somebody would look at me and say, that's coach right there. And, or of course, when we're on the field and somebody yells out, coach, we all turn and look, but it's kind of become the thing on our field that everybody knows who they're talking to. And to be able to have that moniker as part of who I am, I think is been really probably the greatest compliment that anyone could give to me. I've spent a lifetime trying to master what I do, and cultivate and learn as much as I can about being a coach. I really look at it as me having that doctorate degree. It's the same thing. This is a part of my name. It's Coach Diatte, just like it would be Dr. whoever. It's just a part of who I am and what I always wanted to become. And it's got to be the greatest compliment ever given.
Well, I can attest, as being one of the young-ish coaches on campus, that it would be weird to call you John. You'll only be Coach Diatte to me, and so that's super true. It's something that you don't get just because you have the position. It's something you have to earn, and so definitely a super cool compliment, no doubt. Speaking of coach, what's a common myth about coaching, and maybe something that you hear a lot, and how would you argue against it? How would you debunk that myth?
I would say that coaches want to win at all costs. That's something that it's always kind of rubbed me wrong, and irritated me a little bit. I don't know how we debunk it, because I know one way that we could. We just get all the people to be around us all the time and see how much we love and care for our athletes. That's obviously something that we can't do. Because we can't do that, I don't know how we actually debunk it, but I know this as is a fact that if the population of people would take the time to spend sitting next to a coach while he's having that tough conversation in his office with the young athlete, or rejoicing with the young athlete when that person's come in to their office, they'd get a different perspective on who we are and what we actually do. They'd see that interpersonal side of all of us that really cares and loves for our athletes. And they'd start to understand that this isn't about the wins and losses. You know, we're all competitive. We all want to succeed. We all want to win on the field. I guarantee you, I sleep better on the nights that we win than I do on the nights that we lose. But what really keeps me up at night is when our athletes aren't doing well, and when they're struggling, or when one of them's going through a hardship. And being, as I've gotten older, trying to be that father figure, I can't fix everything. There's no possible way for me. And that conflict there, loving that young man, wanting to see him succeed, knowing that he's going through something tough. That part of our job has been the part of our job that I think I've taken most to heart as I've gotten older. And it's the part that people can't see.
Yeah.
And I'm not putting that up on Facebook or Twitter or, Instagram. That's something that's personal between me and my athletes. And that it's the toughest part for anybody to actually see. And I don't know, so to answer that second part, I don't think that we can debunk it unless we just keep telling people how much we care and love for our athletes.
Right. Well, you shared earlier that you've grown more sensitive as you've grown as a coach, but the sensitivity doesn't come out on game day when everybody's in the stands and they're watching. It's present on the practice field. It's present in the clubhouse. It's present in your office when the only people there are the baseball players and the baseball coaches. And it's so true that the only way to debunk that myth would be to welcome everybody into those moments, which would probably, you lose some of the magic when that happens. But
well, it's that part's impossible. And you brought up a great point that it's the people in the stands, the parents, the fans, the individuals that come and watch a game. The only part of us that they see most of the time is that competitiveness. Or if they happen to come to a practice, they see us when we're trying to get the best out of our athletes. Like I said, that's my time. This is my time to push those athletes out of their comfort zone to try to be something better for themselves. And that doesn't always come with warm and fuzzies. So what they are seeing is just, somebody who has, and again, I'm bringing intensity and excitement to our practices. That's all they see is this guy that may look like a tyrant at the time, or who is overly competitive. I don't know if that's possible, but that's how they would define it. And they don't get to see those sensitive times when we're putting arms around guys, or where we're having that conversation that means a lot to that person, and we're just listening. They don't see that part. And like you said, I'm not inviting other people outside of it unless I have to come in and be a part of that, because I do think that that's an interpersonal relationship between me and the athletes.
For sure. Coach, what's something that sports has done for your life that most people wouldn't expect? This is one of my favorite questions to ask on the show, where we say, there's some pretty obvious responses to this question, right? You play sports, you're physically active, you're a healthier individual. You play sports, you're on a team, you make friends, you are more social for playing sports. But what is something maybe a little bit more under the surface that sport has done for your life?
Athletics has given my life some rhythm. I tease the kids or joke with the guys that I've never my rhythm to my year has been the same since I was 5 years old. You start school at the end of summer. You have Christmas, you have Thanksgiving break, you have your spring break. It's always been the same since I was, like I said, 5 years old. But athletics has given me more of a rhythm to my life. I know when I start to amp up, and when certain times of the year and the season is approaching, and now that the energy starts to flow, and the excitement starts to heighten, and my life becomes a lot different in January. There are times and events that happen. I go to the National Baseball Convention every year, the first week in January. There's time in at the end of January where there's certain tournaments that are other places in the country that I kind of tune into or maybe coach at, and then boom, end of January hits, first week of practice, we're into that, and for the next 4 months, that's what we're all about. And athletics has just kind of given me that rhythm to my life. That's enjoyable. And obviously, I know when it's over too. My body knows when it's over. My mind knows when it should be over. And that's usually right around the first week in August when baseball's ramped down and I start to ramp down. And I really look for some time to, it only is about a week, but I look for that opportunity to kind of, relax a little bit, get my mind away from the game. But it really has given me something. I don't want to say something to live for because there are greater things out there that I'm living for, obviously my faith and my relationship with Jesus Christ. But but baseball, I guess I could say God's given this to me as a way to have that rhythm to my year.
Sure. Coach, you mentioned your faith, your relationship with Jesus Christ. How is it that you say that your athletic experience has shaped or been a part of your faith?
I mentioned earlier that I've had a lot of great mentors. Damon Gilliland was my baseball coach and my football coach at Valley Christian. He started the football program. And one of the things that was most beneficial for me, or I gained or gleaned from him, was the idea that we don't separate the two. The two aren't separate. There's not athletics and faith. It's the person that you are. It's who I am. My coaching and my faith are one and the same. God's given me that as a tool to share the gospel. And so on a daily basis, I'll see things happen in practice or in a game, and it immediately triggers some biblical reference or some biblical story, some opportunity to teach a biblical life lesson. And I'll use that time. Obviously, during a game, I'd wait till the end of the game to do it. But there has been times when I've walked to the mound and taught an important life lesson in the middle of a game, that because of something that I have seen. I just don't think that you separate the two. It's just who I am. You can't. I can't say that. Okay, I'm going to coach today, and tomorrow I'm going to talk about my faith. It happens all at once, and I think God gives us opportunities for both of those to coexist. I obviously have one at a Christian school. But, he wants those two to coexist. It's like I had said earlier, I look at coaching baseball as my ministry. This is my ministry. It's also my hobby. It's also my job. It's also my passion. But that ministry component of it is so important to me that I don't know that I'd ever want to coach with not being able to have the faith component and the ability to share the gospel whenever those life lessons showed up.
Awesome. So cool. Coach, do you have a favorite memory from your time at Valley Christian, or favorite memories, either as a student athlete or as a coach, that you can share?
I would say that, being a part of that first football team was pretty important. For me, I got to see all the equipment and gear coming in. I spent all summer with my coach, labeling and stacking and inventorying that equipment. Just being a part of that first team, the first time we were able to run on the field as the Valley Christian Warriors, winning our first game, I was a part of that team. Actually scored 2 touchdowns in that game. Don't even ask how, because it was a miracle from someplace else and how it happened. But that was a great memory. Being a part of the first playoff team in football history was also one. I would also say that there's a whole bunch of them in baseball, but the most important one for me is over the last 22 years, we've been able to finish the season 11 times. That's 50%. That's half the time we've finished our seasons in a CCS championship game. So for me as a coach, not as a player, but I think that's a great memory. But the greatest of all memories, or the greatest of all opportunities, the greatest ability that I have as a coach is when I watch our players walk up the fire lane pushing a stroller, wife on one arm, baby in the carriage. And I know that they know that I'll stop. It doesn't matter what happens it's happening in the game. They walk right up to that gate where they know that I'm standing, and they stand there for a little bit. And I always make sure that I acknowledge them. And if I have time, I give them a hug and find out, I got to find out baby's name. And, if it's the first time I've met mom, I want to make sure I get that name. But that to me is the most exciting time, is watching our young men become men, great fathers, great businessmen, great people in our communities.
For sure. That's so cool. I've only just been coaching long enough that I start to experience that a little bit. And so I don't quite know what it's like to your extent, but it is definitely super special. Coach, the last thing I want to go over, kind of my favorite way to kind of shut down the podcast is, if you had a time machine, what would you go back and tell yourself in high school? Or at least what is a piece of advice from personal experience you can share with the young warriors who are listening right now?
My gut to that is I don't know that I would use the time machine, just because everything that's happened in my life has kind of got me to where I'm at. There's been personal failures, there's been coaching failures. There's been things that I wish I didn't have to go through because they were hard. But the fact is, I don't know that I would go back and change them at all. They've turned me into the person I am today. They've helped me become the coach that I am today. For good or bad, it's all about what's happening in the moment. I think God takes us through those things, those trials, in order to get us where He wants us to be. So I don't know, going back in time and changing one of those aspects may throw off, to coin a word from, Hollywood, the time something continuum, that it would just throw it all off, right? And we might not be the person. I might not be the person that I am today. So my advice to all young people is the same: embrace your learning experiences. Take advantage of them. Don't think of yourself as a failure. I think too many times, especially in the Christian community, we sin, or we've done something that's wrong, or we've done something incredibly wrong at times. And we look at that as something that crushes us rather than that builds us up. There's great examples in the Bible, David being one of them, where, I don't know that you can get a resume that's any worse than his. Here's a person that was a liar. He was an adulterer. He was a murderer. He was all those things. And yet God still refers to him as a man after my own heart. And so if David can there's something about David that God just really loved. Maybe it was how contrite he was. Maybe it was that the person, the Bible also says that only God could see our heart. Maybe that's what David's heart was, just so big and loving and kind that God just really wanted to embrace him. But if that's where if that's true, and I know that it wholeheartedly to be true, then we need to embrace the trials and situations that come up in our lives, and they need to propel us closer to God, closer to the person that God wants us to be. We need to embrace that. And so again, long way to say, I don't think I'd jump in the time machine. I'd be too worried about what would be on the other end too. You see, on all the movies, it doesn't turn out great.
Yeah. Space-time continuum.
Yeah. There you go. So I think I just to say, embrace the time that you have and the things that you've gone through.
Well, that's perhaps the best advice that anybody's given on the podcast yet, Coach. I thank you for sharing that. I thank you for taking the time to be here and visit with me a little bit. Before I let you go, if our listeners are looking to find ways to connect with you, what's the best way to make that happen?
Probably email. And as the relationship developed, if there was one, then I'd certainly give out my cell number for text message. That's how I mostly communicate. But jdiatte at vcs.net would be the best way to connect with me. Coaches, if you're listening, you're always welcome at our practices. I enjoy talking through practices and what I'm trying to expect or what I do expect during that practice. Practice has been one of the things I would say I'm most proud of developing around our program. So coaches are always welcome. Actually, parents are always welcome in the stands too. I think that's one of the best times for them to actually see how their young man's progressing. And and how he compares to other guys on the team.
For sure. Awesome. Well, Coach, thanks again. I appreciate your time so much for being on the Warrior Rewind. Stay safe during these crazy times. I hope to see you back on campus again sometime soon.
Thanks, Rob. Go Warriors.